Hi, welcome to the second half of the OHMazing Way podcast. I'm Beth Reese, and I'm here with Lee Weinberger, and we are talking about compassionate, empathetic dog training, people training, children training. It's like all kind of wrapped up together. One of the things Lee and I were just visiting about on the break is one of the big shifts that we had in my house. So I have 2 dogs and a cat currently. That's the composition of the zoo. But one of the things that changed, really transformed, was when we really accepted our dogs for the dogness that they were. And by that I mean, even like my Moon, the part pit bull dog, likes to sit by the window, and he doesn't bark as much anymore, and I think I know why. But he likes to sit by the window and protect. That's part of what he wants to do. So I moved his dog bed by the window and said, I accepted it. Like, okay, Moon, be a dog that looks out the window. And it was like, oh, and again, maybe part of what he sensed was that acceptance of him, right? So he literally, in fact, we often talk about, he barks less, he attacks the window a lot less. But really, in the big picture of that, again, going back to ways that we can be with our 4-legged friends, really accepting who they are, and then also having tools, and Lee's going to share some with us right now, about ways to bridge that empathetic, compassionate communication space with our 4-legged friends so that it can be there can be as much workability and peace as possible. So Lee, what are some of the tips you have for people, some of the common areas that you work on with people and their pets?
Sure. I would say one of the biggest things is, so touching on what you were saying, looking at the dog you have instead of the dog you think you should have, or you thought you had, or you wanted to have. And just being able to meet them where they are. Roxy, for example, really timid. She is not going to be a dog, or she's heading in that direction. But as the dog that you got, she's not your cafe, bar, coffee shop, like take you out to the patio kind of dog. Like that would make her miserable. And you would have been miserable trying to do that, trying to force her into that kind of position. And so it's okay to let them be the way they are. And some dogs are hypersocial and some dogs are not. And sometimes that changes throughout their lifetime. I do not socialize the same way I did when I was 20 or 6 for that matter, right? So you have to be able to look at the behaviors you are seeing, right? Not what you interpret them to be, but what is actually happening, and use that information to get where you want to go, right? So a lot of people spend a lot of time telling me what they don't want their dog to do. I don't want them to jump. I don't want them to bark. I don't want them to potty in the house, X, Y, Z. What I do is I say, what do you want them to do? And I get an answer of, well, I don't know, or just not bark. And so I have to come in and say, what does that look like? How do we positively engage that animal in not barking, right? What are they doing? Are they sitting? Are they laying down? Are they in a particular area? Do they have a particular toy? Do they do something specific that's not congruent with the behavior you don't want? So it's not good enough to say, don't do this. You always have to say, do this instead. And you have to be specific. So not only stop barking, but go lay here and chew on this bone until I tell you to stop. Sit here until I tell you to say hello. Say hello by walking up, not jumping up, wiggling, whatever you want to have happen, sharing a toy, sharing a kiss, whatever the case may be. Be specific. And so instead of getting stuck so much on what you don't want or what you can't do, or what's going wrong, figuring out what you need to have go right. And so just specifically identifying those positive behaviors rather than the negative behaviors that you're looking for is a huge deal. The other thing is potty training is a huge deal for people. and with good reason. There is nothing more frustrating than having to clean up mess after mess after mess. The biggest thing is your behavior and consistency and schedule. Understanding that there are certain behaviors that we expect from our dogs that aren't natural. Going to the bathroom in a certain place, walking on a leash in a certain way. They're not natural behaviors. They're not the way dogs are born functioning. And so if we can't clearly and consistently communicate what we expect instead, they're never going to get it. And you're going to end up in this huge kind of epic battle of wills, and frustrated, and then you end up worse off because now you're mad at each other, and you don't like the dog. It's one thing to have a dog that misbehaves that you like. It's another thing to have a dog that you don't like that's misbehaving. I tell people puppies are cute for a reason, because we would not keep them if they weren't. They are difficult. They take a lot of work. They're hard. And if they weren't so cute, we would not put up with it. So being able to take a deep breath and again, look at your behavior. Am I taking the dog out consistently? When I take them out, am I communicating what I need to? If I'm not taking them out, are they in a certain place? Are they, do they know what the rules are that I want? How do I communicate that? That consistency is so important across behaviors, whether you're talking about potty training, jumping, coming when called, walking on a leash. Consistency, consistency, consistency. That is the magic word in dog training.
Consistency. And I also would say, and we talked about this too, is sort of the consistent practicing training, right? Yeah. That it's not going to be, the day that Moon had recall and came to us, it isn't that I never had to return to practice training him on that again.
Right?
It's like a daily
It's use practice. It or lose it. That's what I tell people. The training skills, it's like a foreign language. And I don't know if you speak a foreign language, but if you learn it, you can be fluent in it. And if you don't practice it, it's gone. You get it back, right? You can relearn it pretty quickly, but if you're not actively using it, those synapses in your brain fall apart. They degrade, and you have to rebuild them. And so it's constant rebuilding and reinforcing and scaffolding and making sure that those pathways are open and firing. Even with, service dogs, if you don't maintain the training, if you don't continue to reinforce the behaviors that are trained, they don't continue to do them. I recently read a study about diabetic alert dogs that they were looking at the efficacy of how alert and things like that. And what they found is if there was a huge drop off in their success rate in alerting appropriately, depending on whether the people continue to practice skills or not. It had nothing to do with the dog. If you don't follow the protocol stops working. So again, use it or lose it. Use it or lose it.
And again, thinking about if you are a parent, if you're a teacher, if you're a professional, and you have a team of people you work with, so much of what I learned working with Lee was also literally were ways that I was also able to help create a better functioning team between me and my kids. So part of the idea of setting up that consistency with Moon translated into the kids and I setting up consistent schedules for who was taking him out when, who was feeding him. And then, so the part of the idea being that there was never a question of, okay, Wednesday at 5:00, it isn't a question whose turn it is. It just was set up, was consistent. And so it was really interesting, again, in the work we did with you, Lee, how much it changed the dynamic working with Moon and with Roxy, and also with just as us as human beings in the house.
Yeah.
Right. And that connection we also created.
Yeah. We have to remember that, we're all animals, right? Some people think that that's offensive or, look, we're all animals, humans, dogs, cats, birds. There's basic physiology, psychology, biology that we all have in common. And learning theory doesn't change that much across species.
Yeah.
It just doesn't. There are different tricks and tips and techniques and things like that. But as far as, creating associations, that's pretty uniform, whether it's a worm or a person, or a chimpanzee or a dog, or a dolphin. The way you build those connections is very constant and consistent.
Yeah. Yeah. So Lee, it's, it is the start of summer here, or if you're listening to the podcast, it's the start of winter where you live. What are some tips for keeping pets safe during these months when the temperatures are extreme?
Sure. So something I'm really passionate about, because unfortunately every summer in Houston, Texas, I do see animals that suffer and sometimes die from heat stroke or exhaustion, things like that. Being able to look for those signs, and then also just kind of thinking in a different way from the perspective of an animal. When you go for a walk in the middle of the afternoon, a lot of people don't think to check the temperature of the concrete. I see lots of dogs that end up blisters on their feet. Not because people do that on purpose. Nobody wants to blister their dog's feet. They think, okay, I have time. It's 2:00. Let's go for a walk. If you put your hand or your bare foot on that concrete, you will quickly realize that that is not a good time to take a walk. And so it's just important to think, like I said, not as a person, but as kind of your animal might feel or think, what is going to be healthy or healthful for them. Take a look at gum color, tongue and gums. What color is it when you start out? And check for changes in that color, either paling or extreme, brightening or darkening. Dogs will overheat, and their gums and their tongue will turn, almost purple, right? Really dark red. And so once you see that, it's really, they're overheated. It's too late. So keeping an eye on things like that. They don't sweat like we do. So in addition to their feet kind of burning, they don't have a way to dispel heat. I've been panting, and there's only so much you can pant. Remembering that they don't have good ways of telling you, okay, I'm starting to get exhausted. I've seen a lot of situations where the dogs, slow down, and it's misinterpreted for lazy, right? Like, why don't you want to walk? And it's because we physically can't. Or, looking at alertness, right? Again, it's not lazy. The fact that your dog can't look at you, right, can't focus on you, can sometimes really just be a physiological issue. And so making sure that you're aware of those things and take them into consideration, frequent breaks, lots of water, make sure it's not super cold water either, because you can send them into shock if you make it too cold. I generally don't take dogs out between like 11 and 5 in the summer in Houston. It's too much. And if you don't have a quick out, even going from the car to the supermarket, right, to the pet store to go shopping, can scald your feet really fast. And so just be aware. And there's some times where you have to take your dog out to go to the bathroom. If you don't have a yard, you have to walk them in the afternoon. That's fine. Look for the shady spots. Run from shade to shade, from grass patch to grass patch, and just give them that opportunity. So that, they can't tell you the way that we can. So look for those things and then respond to those things. It's really important that you're aware of what they are, and then to act on them.
Awesome. Yeah, I once burned my feet on concrete, and it was miserable.
So it's terrible.
That's such a great point to remember for dogs in the summer. And then if you live somewhere where it also gets really cold, like same thing, right? In the middle of January when it's icy.
They'll scald their feet. The other thing that happens, we don't really have this here in Houston, but when they like salt the road, or they there's like anti-freeze measures, Those things are a lot of times really caustic, and they'll eat up the feet, or they're really toxic and they walk around and then come home and lick their feet and, get really sick. So it's important that you're always thinking of how they physically relate to the environment. That's different than how we physically relate to the environment.
Yeah, that's so true. So true. And Lee, one more tip I'd be curious to hear you share. How you taught me to do recall was a little bit different than how dog trainers in the past. And that's such an important one, and we're still working on it. But what are some, that's such an important one, right? So what are some of the ways that you like to teach people to build recall with their pets?
Sure. So I tell people dog training in general, but especially having a solid come cue is about safety, and it's about sanity. Nothing will drive you crazy faster than chasing your dog around when you have to leave. So safety and sanity, we want to make sure, take into account your body language. So one of the biggest things that, was my earpiece here, sorry. One of the biggest things that people forget is what they physically look like when they're calling their dog. And so a lot of times we want to square off at the dog and stand right in front of them and tell them to come here. Well, that's really intimidating. And one of the exercises I like to do is I'll do that with a person. I'll say, come here. And most of the time people come closer, and then I tell them, no, come closer. And there's a point at which they comply, but they kind of do this like sideways, like, why are we doing this? Or they like actually angle their body. They'll come closer, but like sideways. Or they laugh, it gets awkward. And I tell people your dog has a personal bubble the same way you do. And so a lot of times we're saying, come here, but we're projecting, stop where you are. And so make sure that you're very conscientious of the way you position your body. One of the most effective things, lean back rather than forward, angle your body away, and actually walk away. Dogs don't say, hey, come here, I'm going to have a conversation with you when they're talking to each other. They get their attention, hey, you, and then walk away and show you what they want, right? And so a lot of times walking away or even running away, make it a really fun game of chase, can be the most effective way to reinforce your dog coming when called. And then pay up. Pay the bills.
Right.
All right? Pay the bills. There is a real resistance I have seen to people paying their dogs. They really just want their dogs to do things just because I feed you, because I'm your owner, because I'm the person and you are the dog. And I know very few individuals who do things just because. Okay. It's okay to get paid. Now, payment doesn't have to be food or money, right? It can be praise. It can be a game. It can be a walk. It can be a belly rub. But, there's, like I said, a real hesitancy or a resistance to paying your dog for working. And I say, go for it, right? If they earn it, give it to them. And then they'll keep giving it to you.
Right. And just really, who doesn't like, a pat on the back or acknowledgement, a thank you.
Yes, so, thank you. Yeah. Good job, right? I appreciate you.
Yeah, I love what you said about the body language, because and I totally tell it on myself. There are times when, like when I say I'm working on it with Moon, I'm sure there are times when I'm like, dude, come on, let's go. And he's like, I'm not coming near you. And then I'll go get Grace, my 12-year-old. I'm like, Grace, could you get your dog? And she literally opens the door and he like walks in. And I bet it's her, because her body language is like, hi, honey, what's up? And I'm like, come on, let's go.
That frustration, it makes it. I have a really good friend who runs a rescue, actually, but she has a really young son, and she called me and she was laughing on the phone because she was trying to get this dog to walk on a leash and was not being successful, and was like really frustrated, yelling at, get over here, come on, tugging on the leash. Her 3-year-old walked up and took the leash out of her hand and the dog walked off with the kid.
They're so smart. They really get energy.
It was just coming in with the patience, right? You know, without that frustration or expectation of failure or, you know, anything like that. The kid just, you know, said, "Mommy, not like that," and takes the leash. And she was like, "Well, I need to take a lesson from my kid."
You know, totally. And in, you know, in the space and context of, right, it's the OHMazing Way podcast, and we talk a lot about what it is to live a yogic mindful life, and mindfulness being, right, being, you know, clear and present and non-judgmental in a moment.
Yeah.
And, you know, so much of what I hear is and how powerful it is to be with a human and with your pet, being clear, you know, so taking that time to, you know, breathe out, notice what's going on in your body and your mind. If you're having any body sensations, if you're frustrated, if you're, you know, thinking about the spilt milk from this morning,
Yeah.
you know, get clear, get rid of that. And then think about how you're being, just like you would think about how you're being with a person. And again, I love what you said about body language. Like, they're so smart. So really thinking about being with your pet in an OHMazing, you know, mindful space. And that sounds really what part of what I'm hearing, Lee, really is that that's part of the key of what it is to build that loving connection.
Sure. And the last note that I will say, it's okay to mess up. Everybody messes up. Everybody breaks and screams and cries and, you know, curses, or, you know, whatever the case may be. Like that's just part of life. And you haven't ruined your dog because you had a bad day. Or if you've been doing things a certain way up until now, that doesn't mean you can't change the way you're doing it. And it'll change. It gets better. So it's really important, you know, when you fall off the wagon, because everybody does. I've definitely had my frustrated breakdowns. I had a dog roll in poop yesterday. Got real frustrated.
Yay.
It was awesome. And was like, okay, right. Like, I got to calm down. We got to just, you know, wipe it off and keep going. And then we went and cuddled on the couch. And, you know, even though I kind of lost my temper for a minute, it was like, are you serious? You know, you can recover from that. And it's okay to make mistakes, and you have to let yourself and your dog move on, because they make mistakes too.
Beautiful. Perfect. And that's, you know, that's in life too, right? Like, know that in every moment, with every breath, you can begin again.
Exactly. Again.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Lee, thank you so much for joining us.
I really appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
And thank you again for really changing our lives.
I've loved working with you and your family, and you have amazing dogs and amazing kids. And you guys are going to go far together.
Yeah, really awesome. Well, thank you. And for those of you out there listening, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. If you have any questions or comments, please send them via email, post them on the website. We will get back to you, or post them on social media, whatever. We will get back to you. And really, as always, have a great day and be OHMazing. Take care.